Hey, this is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. Just got off air and wanted to talk a little bit about the program today. I've been doing these summaries, and I actually have enjoyed doing them, and helps you understand what I'm going to be talking about and get you prepared for today's podcast. We start off talking a lot about gloom and doom marketing. You've seen the emails where someone's predicting the reset, or the dollar crashing, or the market crashing 80%, whatever the gloom and doom event that's happening. If you get far enough into their information, you'll realize they're trying to sell you a newsletter, trying to sell you a book. So keep that all in all perspective as you listen to what they are predicting. It's been going on for tens of 20, 10, 20, 30 years and continues this day. So I personally don't think it's credible and would not invest in my hard-earned money into information like this. I think there's better sources of information. So talking a little bit about that and taking questions and talking about what you need to know. If you've got a question for me, you can go to prudentmoney.com. If you want to talk about what I do during the day, which is being a financial advisor, I'd love to talk to you if you don't have one. And you can go to prudentmoney.com, go to info@prudentmoney.com, send an email to us, and we'll set up a phone call, and love to hear about your story and get to know you a little bit better. So that's all at prudentmoney.com. As always, I deeply appreciate you listening to the program, and keep the faith.
Pastor Bill Quinn of Love Never Fails, heard daily on Bible School Radio, 91.3 KDKR Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, and on 91.3 KYJC Commerce.
Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, gloom and doom forecasting. What is really going on? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. And I do have a line open if you'd like to call in and join the program. The number to call is 1-877-913-5357, 1-877-913-5357. You can also go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com and send a question into the Q&A section. Its link is at the top of the web page. And you can send a question in that way. Always easy to get information. And if I can help you out, I certainly want to do so. That's all at the website, prudentmoney.com. Also, one other thing I want to make sure that you are, two other things, let me say that I want to make sure that you're aware of. First of all is the Prudent Money e-letter list. You sign up for that, and we'll keep you posted on everything that we put out on the website. And then there's the podcasting section of the website. And you can listen to the Prudent Money podcast, which is a recording of that day's particular program. And you can listen to it on any of your whatever podcast platform that you listen to your podcasts on. And we're on every major one. So go check it out. A good way to get information if you can't be by radio or you got some other things going on, which I understand that. But for all of you that are listening, thank you for taking me along today. And I've talked about a lot of different things. Number to call is 1-877-913-5357. So I'm getting a lot of what I call gloom and doom emails. And anytime that kind of picks up, that's an indication, an indicator to me that we need to have a talk about what all this means. There are a number of what I call gloom and doom marketers. Basically, what they do is they talk about something horrible that they predict something very horrible is going to happen, and you can pick from a long list of things that there's a probability of happening. They talk about how bad it's going to be, And then about usually you're watching a video that they've sent out, and once you get through about 20, 25 minutes of hearing how bad everything's going to be, they'll tell you not to worry, that they've got the solution, and that's when they start marketing their book or their newsletter or whatever they're marketing. And that's been going around for 20 plus years. And it gets, at times during the year, it gets heavier uh, than others. But right now we're seeing a lot of the gloom and doom marketing. And Porter Stansberry, who I've talked about on the program before, is who I would call the godfather of gloom and doom marketing. Once again, defined as forecasting the worst possible scenario and providing the solution to meet your needs so that it's not a problem in your life. And he would send out, he would produce, first of all, he produced these gloom and doom videos and send them out. These things had to have been 90 minutes. And what always surprised me, he was so good at it that people would listen to the entirety of the message. And what he would do, he would actually predict something that was going to happen, very detailed about it. And of course, he's given out his track record of all the things he's successfully predicted and forecasted in the past. So you walk away with this guy's pretty credible. And he's predicting something new that's going to happen. And he even goes as far as predicting the day of the year that it's going to happen. And the one that sticks out in my mind is the endofamerica.com. End of America was going to happen. Something was going to happen that was going to end America as we know it. It was going to happen in July of a certain month. And in fact, someone was telling me who really bought into this marketing, how something was going to happen this July, which I don't think didn't happen, at least yet. I guess there's 3 more days left. But what ends up happening is that if the forecasted event doesn't occur, then he stops all the marketing. He's probably made a small fortune of selling newsletters. And then he'll start up a brand new campaign, brand new gloom and doom marketing, and he'll talk about the next thing that's going to happen. And by then, we've kind of forgotten or a little bit fuzzy on what really happened or didn't happen by that date. But he's already off to the next new one, even creates a brand new website to support his claims. So you got to put things into perspective. Number one, there's not a person who can accurately, 100% of the time, be lucky enough to predict the gloom and doom event. Second, not to say that it couldn't happen, but I call them all low probability events. Could happen, but there's probably a 4 or 5% chance of it happening. And then finally, finally, what they ultimately are doing is selling you a solution, a so-called solution. So, I get a lot of emails during these times where this marketing is really taking place. And the question always is, do you know who so-and-so is? And what's interesting is that some of the top gloom and doom marketers I have had on the program, and this is what the really odd thing is. When they come on to the program, they are generally talking about a book that they've written. And some of these books are very credible books, nothing like what they do spread on the gloom and doom marketing side. And so they have like almost 2 versions of themselves and their material that they present. It's kind of an odd thing to me, but I think I've talked to 9 to 10, never talked to Porter Stansberry, but I've talked to 9 or 10 of these guys who do this gloom and doom marketing. And it's interesting to me that they can be on one program. They can write books that, in fact, Jim Rickards writes some great material, but the books that he writes, and they're many oftentimes New York best-selling books, are totally different than what he does in these gloom and doom marketing videos. So go figure. But keep it into perspective. You'll also see a lot of this in the selling of gold is a big one as well. Second question is, and by the way, I like to, every once in a while on Thursdays, go through some of the questions I've been getting and talk about some other side of the story ways, and that's what we love to talk about on Prudent Money, is the other side of the story, so that you can make good decisions with what God has blessed you with. The second question, though, is what is wrong with the strategy of buy and hold for the long term? After all, stocks always come back. Not denying that, not saying anything different than that is true, because you can buy and hold for the long term. Stocks could lose 45, 50%, and they do always hit a bottom and come back. You see it time again, time in, time out. This, though, it's the problem is that it's just not quite that easy. The first problem with just buying and holding for the long term and riding the roller coaster is that you're developing a pretty strong habit. And that habit is strengthened throughout your time as an investor because you've seen stocks lose a lot of money and you've seen them come back. And so you have developed over time kind of a strategy that you know that works. So the money, you can lose a lot of money, but the market bounces back, stocks bounce back, and everything turns out to be okay. The downside to that habit is that you don't learn the habits of risk management. And which leads me to the second problem, is that what you can't control is the timing of these big drops. Because I'll use, I think 2000 during the tech bust was a perfect example of this. In the 90s, you never would have imagined the market going through a bear market. That really hadn't happened in the 80s or the 90s to the extent that happened in 2000. And that's when America was, the American investor was born in the 80s and the 90s. The 401k plan, the first 401k plan was developed by, I think his name was Ted Benya. I may be getting that wrong. Anyway, more on that in a second. 1-877-913-5357. This is Bob Brooks. Stick around. I'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org. At pastorchuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at pastorchuck.org, a full library of great teachings by K. Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org.
When the Apostle Paul wrote to the Ephesians, he prayed for them and sought to encourage them, even though he was writing them from prison. We'll examine Paul's extraordinary prayers, the privileges believers enjoy, and the proper perspective we should find in suffering. This week on Truth for Life with Alistair Begg.
Weekdays at 5:30 a.m. here on 91.3 KDKR.
In a time when we're prone to setting our minds on things of this world to solve the current crisis we're experiencing, let us trust in Jesus. He is the only one who can carry us through this confusion and unrest. We need to look more to God's Word, how it is properly taught for our comfort and hope. Please join us at 5 a.m. Saturday and 7 a.m. Sunday with Pastor Jason Wallace of Christ Presbyterian Church in Salt Lake City, Utah. Or write Penfold Communications, P.O. Box 913, Layton, Utah 84041.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. 1-877-913-5357. I do have a line open. Love to talk to you. We're talking about what is wrong with the strategy of just buying and holding stocks for the long term. Never really practiced this whole risk management strategy. Just stay invested. The first point that I made is that it develops a habit. And so you've seen through your lifetime as an investor, stocks go down, come back, go down, come back. The problem is that that's how you invest. That's how you have, that's been your experience. And the problem comes in with timing, when you actually need the money. And we're talking about the tech bust, which was between 2000 and 2002, almost 50% of the stock market was wiped out over that 2.5-year period. And if your habit and the way that you invested money was to buy and hold, then you took a huge hit. And I know a lot of people, read stories about a lot of people who in 2000 retired and went down with the bear market and ended up losing half of their income, had to go back to work. So you've got to, and the other thing too is that you haven't developed any kind of risk strategy, so you don't even know where to begin. So you're scared to stop doing what has always worked. So that's the big problem. It's the timing of it. It's not that buy and hold doesn't work, because it does. It's just if you never need the money, then sure, leave it invested for the long term and just stay invested. Having said that, none of us are investing to not use the money. So it's the timing is huge, because what I call low probability crisis events that destroy time are going to occur. Now, what the mutual fund industry would argue with you on that point, or argue with me on that point, is that bear markets come and go. They don't last very long. The problem is that bear markets are so severe. It's just like a Cat 5 hurricane. Cat 5 hurricanes, they come rumbling through, destroy everything in their path, and they come and they go. They don't stick around. But the path of destruction is huge. It's the same thing. It takes a long time to make up for what has happened in one of these very big, low probability crisis events. They destroy time. So take the bear market of the financial crisis. By the time 2009 got here, when we saw the bottom of the bear market, the market had lost everything between about 1998 and 2009. It took a good 5 years to make back the money. If you were depending on that money at that time, lost that kind of money, taking money out while the market's trying to come back, you'll devastate your portfolio. So they can call them low. They can say bear markets rarely happen. There's so many, and this is the other thing too. I actually saw I think it was Oppenheimer. Be happy to call them out on this, because I think it's very misleading. they produced a brochure that said something to the degree of, don't worry about, it was sent out during a year that the market was down. And it said, don't worry about the down years of the market because the good years outweigh the down years. Well, they do, but they have to, because bear markets do way more destruction and take way longer to come back from than bull markets do good things. I hope that makes sense. It just takes a lot of bull market years, good years, up years, to make up for the destruction of the bad years. Now, and I'll go back and use the example of a Cat 5 hurricane. It takes so much to bounce back from that because you know what kind of the destruction and path that a bear market Cat 5 can do to a coastline in a city, such as Florida, state of Florida. So that's the only problem with that. I mean, the crash of the Great Depression, some would say that could never ever happen again. It could. It certainly could. Anything can happen, but you got to remember they're low probability events. A crash the magnitude that happened in 1929 is a very, very low probability situation. But if it happens, you would be ready for it, and you could put your risk strategy into motion. So that's just a few things to consider. The other thing, this is why it's very important to know your benchmarks of where you need to be on a end of the year basis to ultimately get to your financial goals. I can't stress enough that this is one of the easiest things to put together, and to know your numbers is a big deal because you know exactly where you are. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, 1-877-913-5357. If you've got a question, I'd love to hear from you. My third question today is really not a question, more of it's an observation. And it's concerning annuities. And insurance companies wonder why people don't trust annuities. And no, I've heard, there's a lot of bad press, some very deserved, some misunderstood, about annuities that runs through the internet. I mean, if you put annuities into the search bar, you're going to get probably more bad than you're going to get good. Like I said, some's well-deserved, some's misunderstood. My personal feeling about it is that for a certain amount of America who doesn't want to take risk, I think they're fantastic investments. But they're not for everybody. That's the way it is with every single product. But there's a lot of misinformation on that. We've talked about it in the past. But this, to me, is why people don't trust annuities. I saw this ad, and to me, I mean, think as I read this out to you, I think about what would run through my mind if I was looking for a better way. Up to 10.5% annual return. Capture market-linked gains and protection against market volatility and downturns. Guaranteed retirement income. Receive a monthly paycheck for life that lasts as long as you do, regardless of how long you live. Highest upfront cash bonus. See which annuities will provide you with the highest upfront cash bonus applied to your principal. So if I'm looking at this, and I'm the average investor, the average consumer, I'm thinking to myself, wow, I could make up to 10.5% annual return. I can protect myself against downturns. I can get the equivalent to my monthly paycheck. So when they use the word paycheck, it gets you to thinking that you could get the same amount of money. Well, you could if you got the enormous amount of money it would take to create that paycheck. And 3, highest upfront cash bonus. And I could get a bonus as well. So you're going to show me an insurance company. It's going to take your money and it's going to give you 10.5% annual return, guaranteed against loss, going to pay you a monthly paycheck that you can't outlive, and it's going to give you money up front. Ladies and gentlemen, sign me up, because it doesn't exist. That is the most misleading information, and this is why people don't trust annuities and won't give annuities a chance when they could be exactly what they're looking for, because of this kind of misleading marketing. It's so very misleading. And what I guess irritates me more than anything is that the regulators, the state regulators, because the insurance business is monitored by the state, doesn't crack down on this. And truth be told, it's very lightly regulated. And so what ends up happening is that this kind of marketing goes on between the client and the advisor. And what ends up happening is the advisor assumes and interprets the marketing as one way. It's not right. So they have high expectations of something that will never happen. Then you get the bad stories. Then people want out, but they can't get out because they're under surrender charges. And people wonder why, or that they have such bad reputations. This is Bob Brooks. If you have a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.